Welcome to CAMP. My name is Andrew Tuck. I'm the editor-in-chief of Monocle magazine. And I'm delighted to say that we've had a long association with the people here at CAMP who have been great proponents of good urbanism. And it's a topic that's very important to all that we do at Monocle, how we deliver quality of life for all, even in these times. And also, I'm really delighted to be invited because the story of what's happening in Ukraine has been top of mind for us at Monocle. I'm here with my colleague, Carlotta Rebello, who just a few weeks ago traveled across the entirety of Ukraine, meeting Mayor Klitschko on the way to bring some of those stories back to our readers and listeners. So that's on radio and in print as well, because we want to make sure that there is no dropping of this story from the headlines and that the stories of ordinary people in Ukraine are told again and again. So I'm absolutely honored to have been asked to moderate today. And there's a lot to get through this afternoon. I think it's a really important afternoon. We had some conversations away from here this morning, and I know that there's some very big topics that we need to discuss and to talk about, and some very interesting players here indeed. But first of all, there's a little bit of housekeeping. This isn't a forum where you just sit there and people come up on stage and talk. We want conversations from people in the room, and this is being live streamed as well. So there is an opportunity for people to ask questions from all of the players up here. And all you have to do is go to Slido, slido.com, and then you just type in hashtag Summit of Cities, and then you can participate in this conversation as well. But first of all, before we start diving into the deep topics, there's a welcome for us, and that's going to be delivered by the mayor here of Prague, Zdeněk Hřib, and also by Ondřej Bohoč.
Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here at the CAMP, CAMP, Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning. And this is the first day of the Prague Summit of the Cities, and this day is dedicated to the Pact of Free Cities Summit. We have founded the Pact of Free Cities in 2019 with other mayors of the V4 capitals, and we had done this in order to defend the freedom and democracy, and also to stand against the anti-liberal tendencies, the inequalities, climate change denial, or xenophobia. And I'm really happy that since then our pact has grown even stronger. So, for example, just today we have welcomed 6 new members from Berlin, from Hamburg, from Brussels, from Riga, from Vilnius, and also from Kiev. So right now, the Pact of Free Cities unites 33 large cities from Europe and beyond. And I'm very glad that my colleagues from the Pact of Free Cities are here with us today. And we're going to focus on the immensely important topic. Now it is about the cooperation, the peer-to-peer cooperation with Ukrainian cities, especially in the post-war rebuilding. And therefore, I'm glad I can welcome here the mayor of Kiev, Mr. Vitaly Klitschko, and also there will be with us the mayor of Mykolaiv, Mr. Oleksandr Senkevich, who will be connected online. So I believe that insights from both of them will be very important. So I'm looking forward into this inspiring debate, and thank you very much for your attention.
I would also like to welcome you here in Prague at our Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning in this unique space, open to public 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Anyone and everyone can come and find out how we are making Prague a better place to live in or to visit. This is also because we are at the heart of IPR, Prague Institute of Planning and Development, whose mandate is to plan Prague in accessible and in inclusive way. As we all know, more and more people living in cities, and people continue to move to cities. and the importance of our metropolises is rapidly growing. By 2050, cities will house more than 80% of global population. In contrast, the importance of nation states is slowly declining, whether we like it or not. Cities must be prepared to react flexibly on their own needs and global challenges, which is currently a major problem here in the Czech Republic. Our cities act as a counterweight to the state in many different ways, and rightly so. From issues like security to growth and development. It may seem inappropriate to focus on city development and parking and cycle lanes when people are dying in Ukraine. However, there is no doubt when the war is over, and we all know it will be one day, that the reconstruction of Ukrainian cities will be most crucial. And as city planners and elected representatives, we will all be called to action to help rebuild Ukraine in a way that brings high quality of life, sustainability, and joy to its residents. And here at IPR, I want to say that we are ready to answer this call. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Zdeněk and Ondřej. Next, a man obviously at this point who needs no introduction rather. It's been amazing to watch the transition of somebody who's a mayor into a global diplomat for his city and bring to everybody the challenges that he faces day to day. And so I'd like to welcome to the stage the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko. Just before you give your opening remarks, just touching on this point of being a mayor, we're going to talk about some tough topics, but you also have to deliver everyday education services. People still want their rubbish collected. What's it like being the mayor of Kyiv at this time?
Good afternoon one more time. It's not easy. It's not easy to be the mayor. I tell to everyone, it's my previous career as heavyweight champion of the world. I tell you very open, it's much easier to be the heavyweight champion of the world than be the mayor of so big city, because in boxing ring you have one opponent. During this job you have a lot of challenges, and in sport clear rules. In politics it's sometimes hitting you in the back, sometime below the belt, and it's not easy. But one simple rules in the life: no fight, no win. That's why you have to fight. You have to fight for you citizens, you have to fight for your city, you have to fight for your country, you have to fight for your future, and no fight, no win. And that's why we continue to fight, and not easy to be the mayor in peaceful time, but during the war, where you are responsible for life of the people, and people coming to you and asking about support, about safety, and sometimes not everything depends on you. It's difficult, but it's I feel unusual, because last 6 months is maybe third time I take my tie and the jacket the whole time in uniform, together with the people, together with soldier, and to defend. Right before I was responsible just with energy, water services, and right now also as head of civil defense, also depending for safety of for citizens of our hometown. But I'm very optimistic. It's these challenges make us much stronger. And one more time, I tell that today and want to say also thank you very much for every one of you. A big privilege be together in you family, mayors of European city. The Pact of Free Cities, and Kiev is free city also, and we Ukrainians very appreciate for your help. And today the signing of our pact, of our agreement, we make one small steps forwards to make our hometown and our home country more European. One more time, thank you very much for everyone, for your will to help Ukrainians, for your will to see Ukraine as democratic country. And strong Ukraine is strong Europe. It's very simple point. As strong your friend, so strong are you. Ukraine, a peaceful country with peaceful people. And I'm more than sure, very soon, peace come back to Ukraine, and we have to make great challenge for us, for every one of us, to make Ukraine successful. So successful as Czech Republic, as Poland. I spent a lot of time as sportsman in this country and driving through Czech Republic, through Poland, to Ukraine many times in 90s, and I see how countries developed, and I'm very happy to see how successful Prague, how successful Warsaw, because I remember the time in beginning of 90s, it was difficult conditions, and it's mean we are right way. We go directly to Europe and want to be the part of you big family of European city. Thank you very much. It's big privilege to be together with you in one big family of free European cities.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. Well, now we're going to stay with mayors in Ukraine, and we're going to cross over now to Alexander Sienkiewicz, who is the mayor of Mykolaiv, and I believe he's going to come up on this screen in a moment. I already have him down here with me, so let's see if we can get Alexander up. Alexander, welcome to Prague and to this conference about the future of the city. It's amazing to have you here. Could you tell us...
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud, clear, and perfectly. I think there's a slight delay.
Yeah, dear colleagues, dear friends, hello from the city of Mykolaiv. Thank you for the opportunity to meet you online and to talk to you here in the Summit of Cities. The situation in our city is tight. I can say that it's really hard to understand what war is until you are not in it. Even in Ukrainian cities, the war is, we feel war in a different way. Almost every day Mykolaiv is under bombardments. Actually today we have 214 days of Russian invasion and a big war. And since 24th of February, Mykolaiv has had only 33 silent days. The rest of the time we hear shellings, we get destroyed buildings, and we lose civilian people. Actually, 135 civilians have been killed while this war. I talk only about people who were killed on the streets around the city. One of them was a child. About 700 citizens has been injured. 9 of them are children. I speak also about heavily injured people that we record as statistics. For more than 600 blocks of flats and about 800 houses were been partially destroyed. They have no windows and damaged roofs. 77 city schools and all the hospitals were also under bombardment. Today we are repairing them and preparing them for the heating season. Starting from the first day of the war, I asked citizens to leave Mykolaiv because Russian troops shell our civilian infrastructure, they shell bus stops and other public places. But still we have about 220,000 people out from 500,000 people that we had before the war. And main aim is to provide heating in their apartment this winter. Also, on April 12th, we've lost our water supply because water that we pump to our city pipes was taken from Dnipro River. It's almost 100,000 cubic meters per day. So now we are taking water from our local river, but we are close to the Black Sea, and we have salty water in our pipes that ruins our pipes, and people can't drink it. It's hard to understand what city services do in your life, in your city, until you have opened the sink and drink water. Now, while war, people of Mykolaiv understood that it's not so easy to get drinking water to everyone's apartment. Today we have salty water in those pipes, and people go for drinking water outside for water trucks and water tanks that we put around the city. So all our municipal companies help people to clean up the damage and to clean the ruins. We use our municipal vehicles, tractor, excavators, and they every day we lose them because of their resource. So if you ask me how European cities can help Mykolaiv, I would ask for public transport, because we also lose public transport and all kinds of municipal vehicles and building materials. And at the end of my speech, I would like to thank all the cities that have sent to Mykolaiv different help. It's really hard to remind all of them, and we keep track on them. As I know, there is a president of the capital city of Warsaw here, Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski. Thank you for your help and for the municipal public transport that you sent to us. It really helps us. And all the humanitarian aid that you have sent to Mykolaiv. We appreciate your help, and for sure we will stand, we will win, and we will meet together, I hope, in our city, in renovated city of Mykolaiv. Thank you very much.
Well, Alexander is going to stay with us, but I would now like to welcome to the stage the Mayor of Berlin, Franziska Giffey. We're going to bring some chairs up for you as well, so maybe we get the chairs on first before you find yourself standing. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. So the Mayor of Berlin is here, Franziska Giffey. Please come to the stage. Also, Remigius Šimišaš, who's the Mayor of Vilnius, if you could join us too. Erion Village, who's the Mayor of Tirana, is with us as well. And finally, Andrei Sobchak, who is the Secretary General of Eurocities. Now, we're going to keep this in a pretty strict order, and we're going to go through a few images that each of you has provided that I understand that you're all going to talk to. Francisco, would you like to say a few words first?
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. And maybe you take a look on this picture, because this is an airport which you might know, which is a closed airport. It's the Berlin-Tegel Airport. And we made at this airport our Ukrainian arrival center. We had in the beginning days of the war about 10,000, 15,000 people arriving per day in Berlin. And we said, okay, all of them arrive at the Berlin main station. And this was really a huge challenge. And we thought, okay, what can we do? And we made this arrival center with several tents to register, to give first aid, to give the people a first opportunity. Also in the airport building, we had accommodation for the first days. And we managed to make it possible that more than 330,000 people arriving in Berlin had been, in the first step, helped. And this was a very, very intense time for us. Now we have about 100,000 people stayed in Berlin. Others have moved to other cities of Germany, to other countries in Europe. But still, we have per day 500 people arriving. And we try to help very pragmatically, to give the people advice how to find accommodation, how to get the official title to be to stay in Germany, and also to give humanitarian aid for the people who are still in Ukraine. We have a huge solidarity in Berlin, and I can say that our civil society at the beginning, there were normal people standing at the main station saying, okay, we emptied our one room in our apartment to give someone who's coming accommodation. So we had a huge amount of solidarity. And now we have more than 6,000 kids in our schools. We started a project, Ukrainian, German, international school, the first one in Germany. We prepare to make a cultural institute for Ukraine in Berlin, to do that as a pilot project, to give people from civil society an opportunity to meet and to exchange and to give advice to others. And I founded an advisory council from the civil society organizations in Berlin. Before the war, we had about 20,000 people from Ukraine living in Berlin. Now we have more than 100,000, and we try really to support them, to give them work, to bring them into the schools, into our kindergartens, and to give them also the opportunity to get support when they want to go back home, because we have also this many people hope that they can go back to their home cities. And so this is both. It's humanitarian aid, it is help for refugees, and it is also a question how we can help for reconstruction in Ukraine. We send medical support, we send also municipal cars, and also buses which we organize. And today, let me say that for the final remark maybe, today is a really important day for us, because Berlin has joined together with Kiev and other cities this Pact of the Free Cities, and I think it's a very, very strong signal for solidarity, because it's important that we work together on the municipal level. Solidarity and peace are made through urban diplomacy, and that is important. And for that reason, this Pact of the Free Cities is really, really a very, very important signal also for looking into the future, how we can support Ukraine in the future. And I would like to thank Mayor Jeb, who invited us to Prague, and all the founding mayors, and it's really a pleasure to see so wonderful mayors who really think in a pragmatic way, what can we do to help, to solve, and to be in solidarity. This is really important, and it was for me a very, very nice moment and very important moment.
Francisco, just before you sit down, can I just ask you about that balance between standing shoulder to shoulder, which is obviously important in the sense of solidarity between all of the people who in Ukraine, but also what you underline is these very practical steps that you took. How do you get the balance right? And was it easy, just a simple thing, is it easy to look at your bus fleet and say, okay, we've got some buses that we no longer need, I can donate these to Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, it's a practical way. Yeah, we have to talk to our municipal enterprises who do it. And when everyone is doing a little thing, you can manage a lot. And we have learned about the experience we made in 2015 when a lot of refugees from Syria came to our city, and we have learned from the integration policy in former times. I think it's really important that all the people coming to another country have the opportunity to participate, to work, and that we give the opportunity for the kids to go to school. We have a huge discussion sometimes about this, because some people say, okay, we want to go back home, we want to have this opportunity to learn in the digital school with Ukraine. And maybe it's not so important to go to the German school, but we say each and every day where the kids are in the kindergarten, where they are in the school is important. And that's why we struggle a lot to give the opportunity to all the kids who are coming to Berlin to go to school, even if they go back. I mean, learn a little German and be part of a community in the school, that is also worthy to do it. And that's why it's just trying to do the best to manage the situation. I mean, it's not easy, but if it would be easy, everyone could do it, right? So let's do it.
Thank you, Franziska. Let's turn to you now, Remigius. But again, just before you dive in, just tell us, because it's interesting how strong the support is from eastern cities, from cities that are in closer proximity to what's happening. You know, you're in a Baltic nation, you feel many of the pressures. This could easily be a story that impacts your country. Do you feel that there is a sense of shared history, a sense of the same threat that makes it easier to motivate people in your country to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and also to do these very practical things that are needed to help?
Thank you, and hello everybody again. For us it's very easy to understand what is going on here, because we were always talking to European friends that Russia today is not the country what we can trust to. We were treated as like these bad, ugly party spoiler guys, and suddenly on 24th of February we became an expert, unfortunately, and everybody started to listen to what we were talking about. Actually, when talking about what we do to Ukraine, to help Ukraine, to assist Ukraine, and especially about refugees, I must say, frankly, I'm a little bit upset when we mayors all the time talk about accepting refugees. Because we had this discussion in Vilnius in January this year, because we were seeing that things are not going right in Ukraine. People were coming back from Ukraine saying, come on, you are worrying a little bit more than us in Ukraine about this. But it was a big discussion about what is going to happen. And to me, as a mayor, I was getting questions also from the media, from my team. So are we going to accept refugees to help Ukraine if something happens? And to me, I had these answers at the end of January, that I knew exactly how many places for refugees we have in flats and apartments, in sport halls, in everywhere. I knew these numbers. I never told these numbers to the public, because my answer was always the same as it is today. How many refugees are you able to accept? As many as there is a need. That's the single answer. And actually, I think it's the single possible answer, because of course, with civic society, we may accept more, and you should accept as many as needed. Of course, during the first days after the war, we had refugees during the second day after the war. And we had on Monday after Thursday, I think, invasion, already as children at schools. We had Ukrainian teachers at our schools. Now we also have around 6,000 children at schools, some in Lithuanian schools, because people like to integrate, some in Russian-speaking schools, because some people just do understand the language, some in Polish schools, because the language is quite similar to Polish and they don't want to go to Russian, and in several Ukrainian schools we helped to establish as well. But when I've chosen these pictures, I would go there, it's not about refugees, it's not about helping humanitarian. when I think it was on 22nd of February, when Vitaly Klitschko, mayor of Kyiv, invited me, like on the 17th of February, to come to show support. After the Putin speech, I came with my team to show this support, and we had this last dinner before the war with Vitaly, and we asked again, so what shall we do? What shall we do? Because it was clear that something will happen soon, next day actually. And Vitaly told us, first thing we need is weapons. We are a city, we do not trade weapons, so we didn't provide them. But then we need political and informational support. And that was and still is a very important issue. So these 4 photos about this. First, what we did was this Ukrainian Heroes Square, renaming of the street in front of Russian embassy. And the Prague followed immediately, like a day after or something, and others. This was very inspiring and then strong message. There were many activities around there, lots of people, lots of performance and so on. Then we did invitation to Putin next week. Putin, Hague is waiting for you. I always do apologize our Netherlands colleagues. It's not like not inviting for excursion or tourism occupation. It's of course reminding of the prison which is awaiting for him. So that's on the top of our municipal building. We had this painting also the same of the street leading to Russian embassy. Putin, Hague is waiting for you. Actually, a part of this invitation I was painting myself with my hands, and of course people were asking, why are you so bold? Why are you doing this, being so big neighbors of Russia? We understand this, and actually during the first week after invasion, we had not so many refugees actually, because refugees were those people who were hit by the war and they were afraid that Baltic states and Poland will be next very soon. So they were trying to run as far as possible. Then they thought, okay, the situation is different. Now we are able to go there and to work. But then speaking about this support science, I think this is quite important. My Ukrainian friends said, so how did your transport inspection or somebody allowed you to make this? The answer is very simple. Sometimes you have to imply the rule, don't ask, don't tell. If we didn't ask, they didn't tell. I mean, who would say that to take this off? We never had a kind of sign leading to Kyiv. It's, as you see, from Vilnius, it's 779 kilometers. We never had a sign, because it's on Minsk direction, and Minsk is also the closest capital city to Vilnius. But of course, we terminated all these sister cities agreements during the first days and so on. But we put it this: Minsk, occupied by Kremlin, and Kyiv, which is of course free. And this was at the very beginning of March. And this was not just to have a nice photo in here, but also designated to send a message to all Belarusian and Russian truck drivers who were passing through Vilnius to this direction. And where there were also many other signs, all at the railway station and so on, just to pass it. Quite many Lithuanians, they do still communicate in Russian. My advisor Karolis also right here has a huge campaign of, again, calling Russia. Calling and telling things, what is happening. So communication to the West, to Russia and Belarus, to far, far away countries was the most important thing what we had to do. So I want to underline this political level, not just everyday business level, because of course, accepting refugees is a humanitarian thing. We do it, that's it. And of course, we are focusing on helping Ukraine to win. We talked among mayors that, as Mayor Klitschko said, also the plastic sheets or glass sheets are very necessary now in Ukraine just to cover empty windows. So we started this campaign several months ago already. We sent several trucks of glass sheets. We want others to do this, but also sending weapons. And we do assist those NGOs who collect money. And I know that it was so inspiring when in Lithuania the money for Bayraktar was collected in 3.5 days. In 3.5 days, more than 100,000 people contributed for that to raise 5 million euros, just small amounts. But that's just a tiny, tiny fraction, maybe 1% of all the amount which is provided by citizens. Of course, we do assist with this. So basically, this is the story, what we do. If Vitaly will tell that they need something else or something more, we will do this. Thank you.
And just a quick thing on that. This morning we heard Mayor Klitschko talk, and he told us a story which he'll tell much better. When he was a child and Brezhnev died, that he was crying because he thought that he was going to be made a slave by capitalists. And he said the point was that was the success of propaganda. So we know that actually picking up the phone and calling people and then calling out propaganda, that simple signs like this seen by a truck driver do have an impact. Arion, Tirana has been a very powerful ally. Tell us about the picture that you've chosen.
I think the pictures are self-explanatory, but I was also thinking of that story because I remember I cried a lot when Enver Hoxha died, the psychopathic dictator of Albania in 1985. I was 5 years in kindergarten. And, you know, then the student movement came, and of course the first signs was taking the bus of Stalin and Lenin down. And the slogan I remember at the time, I was 11 when communism collapsed, was "Better dead than red." And then you thought you see these stories once in a lifetime. And but apparently for all the time that we've been saying never again, I don't think we really meant it, because it happened in our eyes. And here I don't want to tout what we've done, because I think it's our duty and we should. And to borrow a boxing term, Albania is a small country, but we try to punch above our weight in the category. We are now, I think, in a key position to be a non-permanent member of Security Council. We headed the Security Council over the summer. We have been designated to be the co-authors together with the United States on every resolution of the Security Council on Ukraine. So there's a very heavy involvement from our central government. But I don't want to talk about the solidarity, because I think everybody shares the same rhyme and rhythm. I want to talk about something that has gone wrong. I was talking to the mayor of Budapest, and for us, reacting in the early days, we also did the street naming. And by the way, the Russian embassy in Tirana just announced they're going to another place to protest the street naming, which of course is much easier for us to print another sign than to change location, but that's another story. But I felt discouraged that as we were collecting trucks and as we were preparing for these deliveries, there was EU member countries that turned us back. You know who those countries are. We're clearly not all in this together. Clearly some members are not living by what they're saying. Second, everybody's encouraging Ukraine to join the European Union. I think it's the right course. But then again, we have members who are picking fights with other members. And the story that we saw with Bulgaria and North Macedonia was very disheartening, because it really shows that not all of us mean everything we say. And I think there needs to be some order in the house. Now, for a small country, Albania has had this history of saving the Jews. We were the only country in Europe where we had 10 times the Jewish population after the war than before the war. So it's in our DNA, it's our brand. Albania now houses 3,000 members of the official opposition of Iran. And we were very critical in the processing of the Afghan airlift from last summer. But there's consequences for these acts. And I want to point out a few things just so that we prepare. I don't know if the Russian army literally aims to arrive to Berlin, but as we were talking, there are ways that some of these operations are taking place. We just went through this summer, after the failed terrorist attack on the Iranian Free Iran Congress, the most severe cyber attack that completely paralyzed our government, central and local, e-tax, e-permits, all of our revenue systems. So I think wars will now also take these shapes, and a lot of our cities will probably be targeted for this particular type of warfare. And I think it's much better to share the story of a city that really suffered. We lost about 2 months of our revenue simply because of our systems being down, and this was then openly declared a state-sponsored attack from Iran. So why am I saying this? Well, just like there's a pact of the free cities, there's also another pact going on of the aggressors. And they probably don't meet in rooms, and they're probably not as kind to each other as we are, but they're definitely working together. And there's definitely a dark alliance out there that eventually will start targeting our cities, also in these other types of warfare. So I just want to put that in the radar to say that, look, we should be prepared to also pay a price. And I'm not here to whine and complain. All I'm saying is that such behavior also comes with responsibility, and sometimes we may need to pay a price which is beyond just filling trucks and sending infrastructure. My second very quick point, we went through a severe series of earthquakes in 2019, in September and in November, with several thousand aftershocks, but two major. It destroyed huge parts of the city. So I think what we can bring is a lot of the expertise on how to build fast, but also with high quality aesthetics, and use a disaster as an opportunity. And I think we were with our president of Eurocities, Nardella, in Kiev last month, and I think we have a fantastic opportunity to really turn this beautiful metaphor of a phoenix that comes from the ashes and says we're going to do it bigger, better, much nicer, and a civic response to destruction, to death, and to the aggression. And I think there, Monocle is an outstanding gravity center of architects and urban planners. So I think if we could join forces, we can do incredibly well. And one thing that we found out, as we're also hosting several thousand Ukrainian refugees, is that during the earthquake, I think it was very sad because for those who are relief junkies, and I come from a relief junkie past, as soon as you see a disaster, you say, let's put the tents and let's put people in the gyms. And you say, it feels pretty odd to be a refugee in your own city, just because your building got destroyed and the earthquake or the enemy did not destroy the other person's building. So we went through a scheme in which we paid everybody's rent so they could still live in the same ecosystem, despite the fact that one building got knocked down and the other ones did not. And we did the same thing with the refugees. We said, no tents, no refugees in Europe. We have enough of a coast and enough hotels that are empty most of the year that we can put these kids, so at least the trauma, they feel this is just an excursion in the Adriatic and not necessarily being bombarded constantly by these images. So there are great things that are going on. There are great perils out there that we need to be prepared. I don't know which city will be the next target of a major cyber attack, but I think we need to realize that, if you enter in a battle, you should prepare to pay a price. And the price is not only of solidarity of the colleagues and the brothers and sisters who are in the first line. It may come to our cities, and I think just like we have a Free Cities Pact, there's aggressive forces who are doing their own pacts. And I think this is literally a battle of civilizations and worldviews that we are sharing here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariane. Andre, you're not here representing a city, you're representing 200 cities. You've got a very big constituency to represent here. Perhaps you could just tell people who don't, many of the audience here, but many of the people logging in don't know exactly what Eurocities do. Just quickly tell us what that is and then maybe explain the role you've played in this crisis.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And actually, Eurocities is a network of more than 200 cities all over Europe in a geographical sense. And our aim is actually to contribute to create more sustainable, more inclusive cities and create a positive impact for the citizens. And we do this by exchanging practices on many, many different subjects. And obviously, we exchange a lot about how to support Ukraine in this illegal war from Russia. And also we do some lobbying towards the European institutions to make them aware of the needs of the cities and the citizens and to see what are the regulations that need to be changed. And also to convince them that sometimes there is a need to get access to direct funding from the European Union to the cities. So actually, this morning, Hans Persons mentioned a very famous book, If Mayors Ruled the World. And over the whole day, I was thinking that if mayors ruled the world, or at least ruled Europe, we would be in a very different setting, actually, because not maybe because you're better persons, even if I'm sure that you are, but also because on a daily basis you meet the citizens, you act on the ground, you see the problems, you see the challenges, and you don't have time actually to be involved in ideological debates like maybe sometimes the people at the national governments that are more far away from the ground. And so one possibility is to see cities as the place where we concentrate a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. But you clearly make the choice as mayors to see cities as the places where we can innovate and create new solutions for the citizens and for creating a better possibility. And I'm quite confident that you can achieve it because you decided not to act alone, each one in your city, but to exchange in this pact of free cities and, of course, in Eurocities as well. And this is what we did actually for Ukraine. So under the guidance of our president, Dario Nadella, and I'm sure that he would have loved to be with us, but because, as you can imagine, because of the Italian elections, he actually also fights for free cities in Italy right today, I think. Under his guidance, very soon, actually, Eurocities decided to organize a huge solidarity event in March, and many of you organized these events together. The same day, we were organizing meetings in all our cities and to show our citizens that actually, as you just mentioned, it's not only about Ukrainians defending our values, it's actually about ourselves, and everybody in our European cities and beyond has to be involved and also has to pay a price for this. So this was the first moment. Then, of course, we organized a lot of exchange of practices about to welcome refugees. And Arian, you mentioned the fact that, of course, we need to accept them at the best way and to learn also from the past and maybe to avoid certain mistakes that we made in the past and to welcome them better and to integrate them, but also to allow them, of course, to go back when freedom again will be ensured in the country and to rebuild the country, of course. In particular, we worked a lot on children because currently we have 2,250,000 children from Ukraine in European cities that are in kindergartens and preschools. So a lot of cities, the mayor of Berlin, Franziska Giffey, you mentioned the fact that you had to adapt and it was not so easy to know how actually to welcome the children in the best way and to take into account the wishes of certain families also to continue the Ukrainian schools in parallel and so on. So it was very important, I think, that Eurocities could offer this platform to exchange on the practices, and we couldn't do so if we couldn't partner with UNICEF. Pierre Corrie is also from UNICEF here, and I really would like to thank him that we work together. Eurocities is not acting alone. We work with the Pact of Free Cities, we work with UNICEF, we work with the Committee of the Regions to see how we can actually pool this experience and learn from good experiences, but also sometimes, and we, I think, managed to create a relation of trust also to exchange about errors, mistakes that we made in the past and to avoid repeating them. And then the picture that you can see here, Arian mentioned it as well. 1 month ago, together with 8 mayors, our president and Arian and Kostas from Athens and other mayors, we went to Ukraine actually to discover, of course, the situation, and personally, probably what impressed me the most and what shocked me the most was the memorial for children. Actually, to see all the children that already died in this war, and it was a very emotional moment, of course. And we discovered the needs from the cities, but also we signed a memorandum of understanding to see how we can pool actually the resources and the skills from our different cities. Arian, you mentioned the fact that you rebuilt your own country and your own city, and we would like actually to give support to Ukrainian cities to make the cities more resilient, more sustainable. And one of the examples is the fact that we can actually rely, for example, on all the skills that we are developing in the field of the mission cities that were committed to become carbon neutral. Eurocities just also work together with the European Climate Foundation to start to link 10 cities from Ukraine and 10 cities from the rest of Europe to see how we can rebuild schools by using renewable energies, how we can rebuild hospitals, and how also we can have not only a system where it's building by building, but an urban planning actually, and I think we are at the right place to discuss this. So it's, I think, very important, and you can count, of course, on Eurocities to continue this work. We mentioned also this morning the fact that the winter will be crucial, and when we met the president of Ukraine, he really asked also the mayors, and I think the mayors are ready to come back to their citizens and to say that even if the cities are facing a lot of difficulties, even if we have a lot of citizens that are now facing energy poverty, we cannot forget about what is happening in Ukraine, and we shouldn't stop our support to Ukraine, even if it's difficult. We need to continue, and maybe also we can think about organizing another event like the one in March, where we can actually show that all the cities in Europe work together and put pressure also on the national governments that sometimes may be tempted to lower a little bit the sanctions against Russia. So this is all the ambition of Eurocities.
Thank you very much, Andre. I've promised that I will keep this session to time. So here's a real challenge. There's like a couple of minutes left on this session. But could everyone in just a few seconds, and really just in a few seconds, when you go back to your cities and you go back to your headquarters, what's going to be the top thing that you think you can do in a practical way that is going to lead to change and greater support for Ukraine, for Remigos, for you in Vilnius? And this is going to be very snappy, so we'll go fast.
Yeah, just very short. This is the past, what we did. For the future, of course, we're preparing for helping rebuilding and then listening to Ukraine, but also helping Ukraine to rebuild Ukraine in a better way than was before. Not the Soviet, post-Soviet Ukraine, but Western humanistic Ukraine, and it's not about the energy efficiency, not so much about energy efficiency, but about urbanism, first of all. So this is the first goal.
Franziska, for you.
What we have learned from Vitaly Klitschko was today an approach which is mayor to mayor. And this is, I think, a very good feeling that no one is alone. We are a strong network and we can work together. And one practical thing I learned, that window glasses are at the moment the crucial thing. And I take that to Berlin, that we think about so many buildings are refurbished, so many things, very often window glasses are put away. And we should think about what we could do to bring the window glasses to Ukraine so that the people have a warm flat.
Thank you so much. And next on the list for Tirana.
So next on the list is we're sister cities with Kharkiv. We've City Council just approved a budget for several buildings, a school, kindergarten, nursery in Kharkiv for our sister city. Second thing I will do is I will call Dario, and other than to console him about last night's elections in Italy, is to get going on maybe hosting, and Monocle, can I invite them? Yeah. To host an architecture conference. We have some outstanding people like Stefano Boeri from Italy, the Bosco Verticale, Vertical Forest is already working on the master plan of Irpin, he told me. And I think there's brilliant architects out there who can really use this opportunity. And the third thing I will do, I will campaign as hard as I can so no more fascists win in Europe.
And in just a few seconds from yourself, the top of your list, the practical thing you'll take away from here that you'll do when you leave, do you think?
I will go back to the European Commission and the European Parliament to say them that there's really this energy from all the European mayors, and that maybe we can strengthen our cooperation and really to get this direct funds from the European Union to the cities to help them to support all these different issues, because without money at a certain point of view, we cannot do everything that we want to do.
Thank you very much. And a huge round of applause for our amazing panel and great ideas being shared. Thank you so much. Well, we've been hearing lots about the Pact for Free Cities, and we're going to explain a little bit more about the work and the extraordinarily rapid growth of this organization. But to tell us more about the Pact and what lies ahead, I'd like to welcome the Mayor of Warsaw to the stage, Rafał Trzaskowski.
Dobry dzień.
Great to have you on here. Can I just, again, many people in this room are involved in the organization, understand everything about it, but could you just tell us how it came to be, the Pact for Free Cities, and the work that it's trying to do?
Well, hello everyone. I mean, it was very simple. I mean, Gergely called me from Budapest and he said, I've got a wonderful idea. How about we demonstrate to Europe and to our friends that fantastic things are happening in Budapest, in Warsaw, in Prague, and Bratislava, not only populist governments, and that we can send a signal that the Visegrad Group can actually be constructive. And then we've called Zdeněk and Matusz, and we've decided to work together. And of course, we thought it's going to be only about us four, but it turned out that that we hit the right spot. That there is a need for cities to collaborate, also in a political sense, above the differences, because we come from different parts of political spectrum, but to send a message that we are at the forefront of change, that the European Union cannot really realize any of its priorities without cities, and that when we talk about values, when we talk about fighting populism, there's quite a lot that we can do and we can contribute.
And tell me, there's some frustration, obviously, about, you can sense the EU has been slower to step up in certain places as people would have liked, and that maybe some of this funding, rather than going through national bodies, could go directly to the cities who are confronting, especially the issues to do with Ukraine. Is that something that, a frustration that you feel that it'd be good if some of this money came directly to you?
Well, the most important thing is that we are different from national politicians. We are never frustrated. We have no time for frustrations. We just have time for hard work. But we've got some good ideas. And it seems to me, and I've been doing European integration for 20 years of my life, so I know how the EU budget works and how the money can be spent in a way which is most effective. And for me, the most important thing is that we thought, and we've discussed it among ourselves, that if there were a bit of direct financing, which would go to the cities, we would provide for a win-win situation on so many different levels. I mean, just let me give you one example. If you talk to the people, and that's another difference between us and the national politicians, that we talk to the people all the time because we're on the streets of our cities. Do they really know what it means, you know, like climate neutrality? Do they know what it means, you know, fit for 55? Do they know about the different targets that we set for ourselves in the European Union? They don't. So how about we translate it into something palpable, something that they can really see? So one of the ideas was that if the European Commission were to come up with concrete programs, like, for example, we take away diesel-powered buses from the streets of the European cities. In 5 years, imagine that, okay? So like imagine that the European Commission opens up a program whereby first, your city needs to be ambitious. So it prepares its own plan to get rid of fossil fuels, right? And then if you're ambitious, then the European Commission directly helps you to get rid of the diesel-powered buses. In 5 years. Can you imagine that? It's a win-win situation. First of all, the Commission has a huge win. The European Union has a huge win because everyone sees the effect of its policies. We have a huge win. Why? Because somehow populists do not win cities. Somehow they don't. And of course, the European Union is tough on the questions of rule of law, and it should. But at the end of the day, it is us, the citizens, who get punished because of the crazy governments. So if some money ends up in our hands, then of course, we will also get out of that conundrum whether to have strict rules on the rule of law or whether they are penalizing the people more than the governments. And finally, we know how to spend money in the most effective way because we've been doing it for years. Warsaw itself has spent 5 billion, that's billion, 5 billion euros from EU funds. So we are prepared to do that well. And at the end of the day, again, you know, we cannot just simply hide because you're on the street and the people are asking, so how did you spend the European money? And we can, you know, explain it and show it. So we are in search for such win-win solutions, and we're trying to explain it to the Commission, to the European Parliament, and to the Member States, that opening up such avenues is a good idea. And of course, we're talking about 3%, 4% of the funds, which could be spent more effectively.
Now, we've talked a lot about solidarity and simple measures that you can do to help. But for a city like yourself, money is actually quite important. You were explaining earlier that your city had effectively grown 12% in a matter of weeks. And maybe you could just, you were certainly not delivering this as a complaint, but just delivering this as something you had to think about and consider and plan for, the issue of public transport, for example. Maybe you could explain that to the audience. It was a fascinating insight into the day-to-day issues of absorbing 12% more of your population.
Sure. I mean, first of all, let me do my spiel. I love it. When I was in European politics, so you can imagine, talking about frustrations. Anyhow, so people were saying, become a mayor. That's the best job in the world. You can plan for the future. It is so wonderful. You focus on the taking decisions and so on and so forth. And you can forget about, all of those challenges, national politics and so on and so forth. Fantastic. Boom, we had first wave of pandemic, and then 5 consecutive waves. And then we had a war, and then we have an energy crisis. By the way, none of which is really a competence of a city. Yet we are at the forefront, dealing with all of these challenges as we go along. Prague, Budapest, and each of our cities that we need to run. And of course, now the question is what to do with that and how to find a way in which we could cope. And at the beginning, it was not easy because we had 300,000 people coming to Warsaw in 3 weeks. Imagine now I will come back to the European story of my life. I was a minister of European integration, right? We had in 2015-16, 300,000 people coming to Europe, okay, at the peak, and we were panicking. And we had 300,000 people coming to one city alone. So of course, it is a challenge. Now, you've talked about solidarity. That's the solidarity of the ordinary people. What you saw in action was not the central government. It was the people, the civil society, the non-governmental organizations, and then maybe the local government. And now, of course, we need to look into the future because we were planning for the development of Warsaw, and we thought that we were going to have additional 200,000 people in 2045. And we were preparing a master plan for Warsaw and zoning rights and zoning plans. And it turned out that we have, because now we have 200,000 people who stayed in Warsaw in a matter of few months. So of course that means we need to replan our activities when it comes to urbanism, but when it comes to all the city services. Because 10–12% of people more in one city means that you have to prepare your public transportation, you have to prepare water and sanitation and so on and so forth. And this is not easy. What the central government says, the refugee crisis is over, okay? We have a funny prime minister. 6 times he said that he combated COVID himself. 6 times he won, and people are dying in Warsaw. Not in the same numbers, fortunately. Now they've declared that the refugee crisis is over. Of course it's not, because the long-term problems are with us. Imagine that we have to plan for 80,000 new kids who are in Warsaw. We have to plan for healthcare. I run 11 hospitals. We need to plan for housing, for social protection, and so on and so forth. And it's not easy. This is the last message I wanna share with you. Why isn't it easy? Because so far we do not see, thanks God, we do not see fatigue in Poland. People are still helping out, okay? But once the services of the city go down, then sooner or later you will have that fatigue, okay? Once the winter kicks in, and with those prices of energy, inflation, and so on and so forth, that might kick in. So my job is to make the city work as it worked before, so that this fatigue will not come over and will not create problems. But that means that we need to do as much as we can. Most of my psychologists, after 2 years of COVID, with kids traumatized by long-distance learning, by this vicious attack of the conservative government on the LGBT community. We need our psychologists to work with our kids. They're working with refugees because they're incredibly distressed, which is fine, but of course you cannot keep it up. That's why Pact of Free Cities is so important, because first of all, we do benchmarking. Second of all, we exchange experiences, how to do things better and quicker. Thirdly, we're in contact with the people on the ground in Ukraine, so we can look for synergies. For example, when we strengthen an IT platform for distant learning in Ukraine, you're also helping us out, because we can do distant learning from Poland or from the Czech Republic and from Slovakia. And thirdly, we will use that stage not only to speak fast, but also to influence European institutions and some of the member states in order to pick some of those topics that we explain and help us out to look for solutions, such as direct funding, but not only.
we have a list here of some of the things that you're proposing for the pact to do. There's way too many, because I've been asking you too many good questions to go through now. But let's just do one more before we bring up the rest of the panel. Bringing European perspective to the rebuilding to help integration to Europe. Is your ambition to make sure that Ukraine does become an EU member?
Well, we've promised it, and now, of course, we have to deliver it. And this is a test to us all, guys, because this is my greatest worry. I mean, Putin has miscalculated on so many different points. He thought that he could divide the Ukrainian society. He never expected so much courage from the Ukrainians themselves. But he also wanted to divide us. He thought we would be weak, sanctions will take forever, we would start quarreling, the populists will take over, and so on and so forth. He wanted also to create a migration crisis. Now, we stood united. And as for our experiences in Europe, we were and are pretty tough. We could do things quicker, we could send more weapons and so on and so forth. But I would submit to you that to a certain extent we've passed the test. But now the question is what's going to happen next? And the most important thing, and this is not banal, but I mean, the Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom and for the stability of Europe and of the transatlantic alliance. And every crazy despot in the world is watching. I'm not going to enumerate all the countries where they have crazy despots, but they're watching, whether we're weak or not, whether we can persevere, if we have enough stamina to withstand all the pressures, and they're going to be more and more precious. So if we promise membership, which is going to stabilize the neighborhood, if we are serious about being generous, and of course it's not going to happen overnight, that means that we have to deliver. And we've promised membership to some of our friends in the Western Balkans in 2003 at the Thessaloniki summit, 20 years almost, and there's still a long way to go. So we need to speed up. We need to find flexible ways to integrate our friends, because otherwise we're not going to guarantee stability. And most importantly, it is about our credibility. We need to fight the fatigue syndrome. We need to explain to the people, yes, freedom costs. It costs money, but it's better to pay with money than to pay with blood.
Thank you so much.
Delivered my spiel.
Mayor Truskowski is going to stay on stage with us. We're going to bring some chairs on now, because we're going to shortly welcome to the stage some more leaders here in Europe to talk about the pact and its work, and to understand a little bit more deeply about what it does, and also to recap on some of the things we've already been hearing about this afternoon. So I'd like to welcome back to the stage Erion, the mayor of Tirana, if you'd like to join us once again, to Andrei Sobchak, who's going to be back on stage, I believe, if they are around. Andrei, please join us. Okay, he's in the press center. This is a better place to be than the press center. Let's ask him back. And we're also going to be rejoined online by Alexander Sienkiewicz as well. So we'll wait for him to tap in. But going back to the question of what's happening with the pact, tell me, as it expands and gets bigger and bigger, what's your hope of what it could become?
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing, and I'm very happy that Andrei is here with me on the stage, is to look for synergies, because there are quite a lot of networks in Europe. I'm the treasurer of Eurocities. We are both with Zdeněk and with Matusz in the Committee of the Regions, which is an institution of the European Union. But we've decided that we've got something else to offer, something a bit more practical, a bit more political. And that's why we've set up the Pact of Free Cities, which is expanding, but it's also expanding to some non-European cities, which is very important. So now we want to look for synergies so that we can all work together in order to contribute to EU priorities and challenges, and put pressure to bear where we need pressure. And of course, what does it mean? I mean, the most basic message is this, that cities are now at the forefront of change, and whatever challenge you touch, it's on us. And secondly, that you cannot meet any of the most important priorities of the European Union without the cities. You will have no green Europe, you will have no innovativeness, digitization without the cities. Which means that they need to hear us out and they need to think out of the box. Because if not today, then when?
And just tell me, when you first founded this organization, the mayors who were the founders, they sat in nations where there was maybe a little bit of a disconnection between national politics and city politics. And we heard earlier today how cities tend to be more liberal, slower to follow perhaps some political trends. Did you see yourself as a counterweight sometimes to what was being debated at a national level?
Well, I mean, you know, our case is pretty difficult, the case of Poland, the case of Hungary, because, of course, we have populist governments, incredibly conservative, and unfortunately also anti-European. So, as I've said, what we wanted to demonstrate, and, you know, there was Andrej Babiš in the Czech Republic when we were setting up the pact. What we wanted to send a message, guys, first of all, we are meeting those challenges head on. Secondly, guys, populists do not win cities, so we need to think about it and do something about strengthening the voice of the cities and the role of the cities in the decision-making within the European Union and elsewhere. Thirdly, we've got some real expertise because we are on the ground, so we can really give you good ideas and create synergies and win-win situations. So these were the things we wanted to do, and we, in a sense, focus on a positive agenda. Because, I mean, if you wanted me to start complaining about my government, we would waste another hour, and I'm absolutely sure we would have lots of fun, but that's not the reason we're here, because we really want to look into the future and plan the development of our cities, but also of the European Union together. And without the increased role of the local and regional authorities, we would go nowhere.
Andrej, tell us how you work alongside the pact and where you see the crossovers and where, you know, for political reasons, maybe you need to step away and feel that, you know, you're an organization that represents actually 200 cities with very different perspectives from their leaders.
Yeah, I think, as Rafael said, there are a lot of synergies to be created among the different organizations. Eurocities has now a history of more than 35 years, and we have the opportunity to have a huge staff. We are now 80 persons that we can use actually for a certain number of projects. And the Pact of Free Cities, I think, as you mentioned, has maybe a more political dimension. I mean, this is also, as a new Secretary General of Eurocities, one of the aims that we have also for our network, because I think Eurocities is well known for its technical expertise, the ability to organize knowledge exchange among 200 cities. We have very good relations with the different European institutions. The Commission relies a lot on Eurocities. The Parliament has good contacts with us already in the last 4 weeks. When I started my mission, I met a lot of people, and they were actually asking Eurocities to play a more important role. And I think that we can actually work better together with this Pact of Free Cities and to use our assets and to use the assets of the Pact of Free Cities to actually create a bigger impact. And also, of course, not exclusively, as you mentioned, there is the Committee of the Regions. There is this alliance of regional and local governments for Ukraine, because we cannot afford actually to say that everyone wants to be on the forefront of Ukraine. We need to work together to make it more efficient, and a lot of the cities actually are members of different networks, so it's up to us maybe as the administrative part of these different networks to sit together and to see how we can actually achieve the best impact for everybody. But I clearly don't see it as competing networks. It's more inspiring, and it's always, I think, also a good idea that maybe sometimes there was this political will to create something additional, maybe to give also a political highlight to the fact that there is this risk of populism, which was maybe not identified as such by Eurocities, but it's a way for us to improve in the future.
I will just give you one example, because we are also more agile than some of the member states. I remember that second day of the war, we had a conversation with Vitaly Klitschko and his people, and we said, what do you need? And they told us, you know, we need lots of food, but which is not going to get bad, some medicine, and so on and so forth. So we organized a transport by Ukrainian railway, okay? The next day, 2 days later, the trains, we were just my deputy was putting those packages into this train, because we've talked to the Ukrainian railmen, in a way which was not very official, to put it mildly. And we've done it, and then we hear the government saying, no, we will take over now. We will create a center to coordinate all the actions. And they started doing it, and they were creating the center for 3 weeks. And we were sending those parcels every night. So then I talked to the minister, and of course there's not a lot of love between us. And I tell him, you really want to do that? You really want to take it off our hands? And when are you going to be ready? In a month or two? I mean, we're doing it already. So he said, no, you've got your own capacity. It's pretty big in Warsaw, so we'll leave you out of the system, And we were able to help because we know how to do things, because you need to deliver on the ground instead of thinking about big schemes, which sometimes never work.
I'm going to try and cross over. I don't know if it's possible if the tech team are following. If we can cross to Alexander. I have a slightly frozen picture here, but I'm not sure whether it's possible to speak to Alexander. It looks like not. And the other question is, I don't know, no questions have appeared up here from slido.com, so I don't know if anybody has been asking questions, but if any of those could appear on the screen during these conversations, it would be great as well. No, neither technical thing is going to work. I'm going to stick to what I know best, which is asking the questions up here. Another thing you've highlighted is the need for generational change in leadership in our cities as we begin to think about helping Ukraine. And all of the mayors were the founding partners were roughly the same age. Do you think there is a shift in focus about how mayors think about their role and their jobs as they begin to step up to crises like this?
Well, it is true that we are old. And no, I'm serious. I mean, this is crazy. I'm 50, and people say, "Oh, you're a young generation of young politicians." I mean, that shows that we are in trouble in Europe. That if people are 40-something or 50, they're considered young. We should be moving. We should be moving, and it's not just the question of young or old, because it's all question of your mind, and you can be 70 and much younger than some of the party apparatchiks who are 25. But it's a question of being in touch with the people. And I've spent most of my life doing national politics, and in local government, you just need to react quicker, in a way which is more effective. You have to deliver, and so on and so forth. And you also need to be about the future, because otherwise you will lose the next election. And I think that yes, in a certain sense, if we are in the business of planning the cities for the future, and that's what our citizens demand of us, then we need to adapt. Why? Because, as you've said, cities somehow tend to be a little bit more progressive, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more tolerant, and a little bit ahead. Which, of course, for the national government, they need to plan so as if to equal all of those differences. But our job is to catch on pretty quickly, and also push the European Union to be a little bit quicker as well. I mean, I'm going to tell you just one thing. I've seen American money on the ground much sooner than I've seen any European money. That hurts me. That breaks my heart, because I'm a convinced European. But that's why? Because we are so slow with the decision-making processes. Because there is no additional money. Because the poor European Commission needs to simply focus on the money which is at hand. Because the member states were not moving speedily enough to create just a little bit of new money to help us react with the crisis, okay? And we cannot simply use the money which was unused, because there is not much of it. So we also, I would say that that's why it's a win-win situation, because we are being asked difficult questions every day on the streets of our cities, we also have that appetite for pushing European decision makers to make decisions quicker, and also prove to them that not all is lost in Poland or in Hungary or anywhere else.
Andre, you're nodding your head there.
Yeah, because one of the projects that we currently have at Eurocities is to create a Eurocities Academy, actually, to help a young generation of city leaders to be trained by all those who have experience. And I agree with Rafael, it's not a question of age, but it's a question of ensuring that there is a next generation of leaders that has the awareness of the role of cities, the responsibility of cities, and that can learn from those who have already this experience. So there could also be some kind of mentoring sharing among the experienced mayors and the next generations, be it politicians or people that are in the administration. And maybe this is also a way where we can work together with a specific focus maybe on the cities of the Pact of Free Cities, because maybe there's even more need to make sure that the cities remain free in the future as well and play their responsible role in the future. So this is something that we plan also to work together with academic institutions and other actors, and to play this role to make sure that also the people that are going to work in the European Parliament and the Commission have also this knowledge of what is happening in cities. Currently, among the commissioners, we have only one, Vice President Souza, who has been a mayor, and this should change. I hope that some of the mayors here around, maybe as a future step of career, could become commissioners, and that will also have an impact on the way how the European Union is working and how we can make a change in our cities.
And Andre, perhaps lastly, I could just ask you that I think it's important that we understand that this is a two-way process, that actually at this point already, Ukraine has a lot to teach us about city governance, resilience, running stretch services. How many of the Ukrainian cities are currently members of your organization? And has that already begun to be a two-way process of listening as well as offering help?
Yeah, we already had 4 cities of Ukraine that are members of Eurocities, and actually also, of course, the whole process that we are putting into place, we work together with the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and it's also a way of course, involving more cities in Ukraine and to have more city-to-city cooperation in the future. It's also a win-win process in this sense.
There's so much we can learn. I mean, I have to say that, at the end, because, we've been, I was working on European integration from the 90s onwards, and we were so much used to, in our part of Europe, for a lot of patronizing people coming from the West and saying, what do you know about Europe? What do you know about politics? I mean, you're backwards. We will teach you. We will tell you how, and so on and so forth. We've seen it everywhere. And similarly, there was this patronizing attitude towards our Ukrainian friends and so on. And now they're proving to us the value of the most important things that we've been always talking about, because they're ready to die for them, okay? So we only talk about it, and they're able to actually take that responsibility to the maximum. But also, they have been surprising us on so many counts, when it comes to courage, when it comes to resilience, when it comes to way in which you behave in times of distress. And I'm not only talking about the military service of Ukraine, which is now doing this fantastic counteroffensive. I'm talking about the people who come to our cities. I mean, I'm under such an impression. We had 200,000 people. I mean, the way in which they organize themselves. Like, we've created those places for them, for them, and like in a matter of days, they've divided job among themselves. Some ladies were staying with the kids, the others were looking for work. They told me immediately they don't want to be a burden on us. 50% of them already work. And they've organized themselves in a way which is absolutely incredible. And the resilience that they show, I mean, it is, for some of us, we are growing fat and lazy. We sometimes need that impulse. We need an impulse to understand that those values that we are talking about are so important that people are ready to die for them, but also to have that fresh impulse, fresh energy. And of course, the rebuilding of Ukraine is also an incredible chance of us all, because some of us keep on forgetting what this European integration is all for. This is for standing united. This is for not having another war. This is for standing united against the crazy villains who are surrounding us. This is for the health of our economy, which is going to contribute because we need to rebuild it together. This is for finally standing up to all of those challenges, because we cannot standing up for those challenges alone. The pandemics, the wars, the energy crisis, and so on. And this is to speed up our efforts. So if you hear from anyone, there is a war, so we need to stop or slow down our ambitious on green agenda, it's the other way around. We need to speed up all of our efforts, and we need to be more ambitious than we were before. And that's what the Ukrainians are telling us every day. That's why we need that. That's also why some of our colleagues in Western Europe needed us to tell you that European integration is an indispensable way of dealing with our security questions and with all the challenges that are before us.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause, and thank you so much to Rafael, for Andre, to Alexander. I'm sorry that we couldn't join you. And I would thank Arion, but he wasn't here, so we can deal with him later. To the final part of the day, I'd like to welcome now to the stage Jaroslav Kurofurst, who is the Deputy to the Minister of Foreign Affairs here in the Czech Republic. I would also like to welcome back to the stage Vitaly Klitschko, who's going to be speaking again on behalf of his city, and also here to the Mayor of Prague as well. Oh, and so apologies, Philip Correa. I didn't announce your name, but we were chatting earlier, and I cannot wait to speak to you again. So, as you've seen, a slight change of billing for the ministry, but we're delighted this has all worked out as well. Well, first of all, everybody's going to say a few words about what they're doing at their level to help in this important crisis, and how they feel that they can lead the way a little bit. And we'll start with the ministry. You currently have a very important chairmanship here in the European Union. It'll be interesting to hear from you about how you're using that to put pressure on Europe to help with this crisis. But maybe you could just talk a little bit to everybody about what's happening at a state level here.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. I'm quickly replaced the Foreign Minister, Jan Lipavsky, who was supposed to talk to you this afternoon. So I just wanted to convey his greetings, and he really wanted to be here, but he had to run for the meeting of the government. So his apologies. He spent actually a whole week last week in New York with the issue number one on his agenda, that was the aggression of Ukraine. He was alarming the international community everywhere. He was meeting so many people, and after 30 years, he was the first Czech representative after such a long time to address the Security Council. And again, he was speaking in a direct talk with the public and the audience, the rest of the countries, and telling them why we are here. We are here to ensure peace and stability, and under your watch, such a terrible, illegal, unprovoked aggression to a democracy, to Ukraine, is happening. So we need to act. He was very strong. I have my own personal impressions from Ukraine. I'm in my position for 2 months at the ministry, and my first trip was not going to Brussels, nor to Slovakia, which Czechs do very often and with pleasure, nor to Berlin, but to Kiev. And we spent a week in Lviv and then in Kiev exploring the needs of Ukraine, different cities, and of course the army and all the partners which were there. We were 8 people, and frankly, I came back impressed. I was so impressed by the resilience of Ukrainian cities, people. We were shown the cities north from Kiev, which were suffering so much in the first phase of this aggression. And it was really strong to see that the life was back. Traffic jams were in Kiev. The markets where the people were selling the garden products, that was back. So really, the life was back so quickly after such a terrible trauma. And the resilience, that was my big topic. I was, before becoming deputy minister, I was a special envoy for the Eastern Partnership. So I came with the agenda that the resilience of the Eastern partners will be the biggest topic. And we designed plenty of events in our presidency program for the presidency in the Council of the European Union, which were having resilience as the issue number one. And I thought, now we will discuss how we can become resilient. There is also the event from that calendar on towns and cities, which might be of interest to you. In Liberec, together with Union of Towns and Cities, we put together exactly the event which is called Resilience of Towns and Cities. It will be 1st and 2nd of November. And now, after I saw all this in Ukraine, well, it's clear. We need to invite Ukrainians and they will be teaching us how we can be resilient. And for example, decentralization on this municipal level and the right level of municipal decentralization is something which is absolutely crucial. So this is really the issue number one of the Czech presidency, of course, together with energy, but Ukraine being a very prominent topic. As Czechs, I have to tell you, we understand it very, very clearly, because we were liberated twice in our history. One, 1938, that was Nazi Germany liberated our borderland from, and they were liberating, of course, pseudo-liberating, the German-speaking population. Sounds familiar? And then for the second time, there were nationalist element in Prague in 1968. Therefore, Czechoslovakia needed to be liberated by the Soviet troops. 500,000 of Soviet troops were coming to that country and liberated it. So, two historical traumas are happening in one time slot, in one place in Ukraine. So that's why Czechs feel very strongly. And you saw all this solidarity wave also among Czech towns and cities. That's the venue to talk about towns and cities. This big wave of solidarity, which was of course led by Prague, but just all cities joined, and it is continuing. We were having, on my trip to Ukraine, we were equipped by the Union of Towns and Cities by activities which many cities do, especially in view of the winter, when everyone in Ukraine is now preparing a tough winter. And Czech towns and cities understand that, and they are, with partners in Ukraine, they are trying to alleviate and help. So this is a crucial phenomenon also for the rebuilding of Ukraine. As the Czech presidency in the European Council, we are trying to push this agenda forward because we believe the reconstruction needs to be started right now. It's not for the end of the war because, well, we cannot wait. And for example, in some parts of Ukraine, it already started. In Lviv, for example, it was so clear that this Russian terrible, merciless, barbaric, inhuman strategy, Golod i Cholod, hunger and cold, as they call it, will or might expel from the homes so many people in the eastern part of Ukraine, and they will continue towards the west. So in these western regions, they already revitalize building. They rebuild some establishment and prepare the housing for these people for the potential wave of migrants. So all this is happening, and we will be very strongly pushing as a Czech presidency to move with that reconstruction process as the European Union, to really put additional money for the macro-financial assistance, which is something different, but the state needs to work. And out of 9 billion euros, the EU put forward, and now we were negotiating 1 and then 5 billion, so 3 are now being discussed within the EU. We need to have a mechanism for the future from January 2023. So all this is very serious agenda. All this is happening in a very tense moment. Maybe you do follow what's happening, of course, partial mobilization, they call it partial. And they call also some strange theater, they call it referenda, so these pseudo-referenda. These are having the calendar we have seen during the Crimea annexation. So basically today it's ending. The 28th, there will be the proposal in the parliament. The 29th, there will be the approval of the Russian Duma and the parliament in Russia of the annexation. And then the 30th, Putin will speak, and we can imagine what he will say. So I would like to say very clearly that we will, of course, never recognize this process. It is the attack against democracy, against the civilization. It is a pure barbarity, and we have to be united as the international community. Czech Republic is ready to lead in that process as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Zdeněk, it's interesting hearing some of the mayors talk earlier and now hearing what happens at the national level. I guess that many of the things you've been facing are much more immediate, practical issues, and the cities are the first places, for example, the refugees come to. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing?
Yes, thank you. Well, of course, if I can follow on what Rafał had said here a while ago, of course, the cities are at the forefront in dealing with the very complicated situation, with the refugees. It's mainly the regions and the cities, of course. And I'm glad to hear that the financing topic is being solved about the reconstruction of the Ukrainian cities. This is definitely the first thing we have to keep in mind. But the second, immediately next thing, what we have to keep in mind is that it is a necessity of a strong involvement of the cities into the process of the reconstruction. And I'm not talking just about the Ukrainian cities, which have to be involved because they need to articulate their needs, their demands, and this is very obvious. But also it is necessary to involve the European cities because we hold the necessary know-how. And for example, we are here in the Institute for Planning and Development of the city. So definitely, if we are talking about making it more sustainable and more resilient, definitely this is the house of experts on this topic here in Prague. And I believe that all other cities have actually similar institutions. So definitely, what is needed here is like a bottom-up approach. So the cities needs to be involved in this.
Thank you very much. Philippe, it's, I guess, interesting to see UNICEF so present in this crisis. Many people around the world probably think that you're working in more distant nations, more developing nations, but here you are on the front line. Could you just tell us the scale of the work that you're currently doing here in Europe?
Yes, with pleasure. I mean, this crisis is a crisis that targets children and mothers. It's a child refugee crisis and their mothers. This is unique. In 33 years of UNICEF, I didn't see that. And I've seen many emergencies. So children and their mothers coming to Europe without protection, not knowing where they go from one day to the other. What was interesting, everybody was going to the border, but you had the 3 years open door policy of the EU. So families are going to go where they could find services. I remember when we discussed in UNICEF in the early hours, we need to go to the border. So we are starting to see what was going on, particularly with an eye on trafficking. So trying to train border control staff around potential situation of trafficking. What we have seen in many of the neighboring countries, they were not used to trafficking situation. You show your Ukrainian passport, even if it was expired. It was so fast. In 20 days, we had as many refugees as 4 years of Syrian crisis. So the scope and the magnitude and the sudden time was so extreme that we had to go very fast. And obviously, the partner that came to mind was municipalities for us, because this is where they go. And actually, we met in December because already in Ukraine, we are there for more than 25 years working with municipalities. And we, with Mayor Klitschko, we are working on a plan for children with disability. In Ukraine, you have the highest number of children in institutions. So how do we de-institutionalize children? And we have a plan. We are working with the Association of Cities that we are a mayor. Today, because of the response, we work with 50 municipalities as part of the response around education, around health, around, obviously, protection, psychosocial support, and it's huge supplies. It's a huge operation, and we have a very close cooperation. And we were also working in Donbass. When I was in December, I was there. And it's 8 years of war. I mean, it didn't start in February. We were working at the contact line for 8 years. So not to be forgotten that there was a war before, and children on both sides. A child is a child, even a child is Donbass for UNICEF. So here in Europe, we immediately, I remember when we met first, you had COVID, it was online. And then I went to all these mayors, the Rafał in Warsaw, I mean, knocking on their doors, and they say, UNICEF, Africa? not understanding why UNICEF would come, but we know what a refugee crisis is, and particularly children refugee crisis. Even governments, when we came also to your government, ministers at the beginning were a bit skeptical, but now we have joint work plans with all the ministries, with some 40 municipalities in the western part of Europe, which is amazing because the hub of services, these people. And amazing what is being done. I've seen things that I could not believe in Bratislava, in Prague, how you turn around a stadium or a swimming pool or into a place where you could accommodate people or register people. So immediately we supported very practically with finance, with expertise, with training, cities around services they could scale up. Creche, preschool, education, health services. In Ukraine, we were at that time supporting the government, the Ministry of Health, in immunizing children against polio. Polio is back in Europe because hundreds of thousands of children from Ukraine were not immunized, even with COVID, even with measles, and were coming because of the war, non-immunized. And our European countries and cities were not used. In Poland, where the most probable outbreak of polio could happen, the director of the football stadium, where you had thousands of people coming for registration, had no clue that the toilets he had, with very limited level of chlorine, were a machine to transmit polio potentially. Polio is a waterborne disease. The director of the football stadium that was so active in getting things organized had no clue. So even in Europe, you had very practical challenges that we had to work together with the municipal teams in using their assets in terms of space, in using learning space. I remember in some of the cities we are visiting space to say, this will be a learning space. This will be for the summer. Because the trauma was to peak on the 3rd and 4th month. And if you don't intervene with playing, with social interaction, with children, trauma will really pick up in the years to come. So those were crucial months. And municipalities were actually there to do anything possible to mitigate the trauma, further the trauma. And Ukraine has entrusted UNICEF, municipalities of Europe, to protect their children, to make sure they continue to learn. 12,000 schools in Ukraine have organized, 12,000 schools with an online curriculum, so well organized. So in Europe, our work with municipalities and government, Ministry of Education around education, was to get a multi-pathways of learning so that children could still continue their online curriculum, at the same time maybe learn Polish, history of the Slovak Republic, go to gym. That was the idea. And of course, there was a bit of a tension of integrating, but at the same time, Ukrainian friends were telling us, but those are our children. Out of 7.5 million children, 5 million are on the road of exodus, internally or as refugees. So it's a major challenge for the future of the nation of Ukraine. So that duty that we have is really about protecting these children, making sure they're not trafficked, that they are not abused, that they continue to learn, they are in good health, that their family and parents, mothers in particularly, are also protected, find ways to, economically survive. So that when better times come, but I'm not so optimistic, we are going to have a long haul. So it's very important that we all team up in terms of municipalities, in terms of government systems, because we need a central system. EU-wide approach. There is a mechanism called EU Child Guarantee that UNICEF pilot in cooperation with the Commission that brings access to these social funds for public policy making. The problem is that it's not that localized. And we are trying to work with our friends from Eurocities to see how we can localize this financing possibility so that public policies could be implemented at municipality level. So I stop there because I could go on and on.
I've got some questions for you as well, Vitaly. You're the reason we're here, really. You're representing Kyiv. Tell us, when you listen to all the conversations we've heard today, what do you need now from these players, from cities, from governments? I think you've got some ideas.
I have a question. Are you not tired from me? I'm actually third time in this stage. Listen, to be honest, I'm afraid everyone, every European will be tired slowly from the news of Ukraine. Everyday lives, the news, war. But everyone thinks about war somewhere far away, but the prices, income in my family reduced. The prices growing up, and we, politicians, depend from the people, from his opinion. Yes, of course, we depend, and very important to explain, to give the real objective information and tell to the people, to our community, what's going on. It's a big challenge. Right now, just a couple of minutes ago, I make an interview, and journalists give me a question. Kyiv is prepared for nuclear war? I was shocked from the question. The Putin right now talk about nuclear weapons. I give him question back. Are you prepared for nuclear war? It's the next level. But to be honest, professional Russian army not successful. Right now they're recruiting simple people from the Russia, and they will be much more successful as professional army? No. It shows the witness from the Russia. It's many protests right now, and the people give the question, why we have to fight? Which reason? It's not our territory, it's Ukraine. Many Russians already died. Thousands and thousands. And definitely right now the question, we European refugees from Russia have to take or not? The actually Russian population give question for his government, to Putin. Why world companies left Russia? IBM, Microsoft, IKEA. And main question every Russian citizens have to give the Putin. For which reason died my brother, my son, my relatives, my friend? It's no sense war, just ambition of one unhealthy man. But it's huge proof, it's huge exam for every one of us in this winter. It will be not easy. Yes, of course, we're talking about rebuilding Ukraine. Rebuilding is coming definitely, but first of all, priority to win this war, to stop this war. First point, it's our task. It's task of our soldiers, of our citizens, and we're ready. I tell many times, I want to repeat, better die than stay in the knee and live in dictator. I know what I'm talking about because I'm born in the USSR, and I know exactly what's going on. We need help, need your support. Sorry, I repeat one more time. Without you, our friends, we can survive. It's difficult. These Russians have the strongest army. They have a lot of planes, tanks, soldiers, and but we have will, and we fighting, defending our home. It's a lot of task. The main task, I just give you numbers. What is main priority right now to win the war, to stop the war? The second priority, to rebuild the country, because we need the help also. Number 3, Ukraine have to be European country, not with the name European, but we are European long time ago, geographically. Rules of law, European rules of law. It's actually the reason why I come to politics is I don't need that, but the representative of Los Angeles, I don't know if she's here or not. We're talking is.
She's here on the front row over here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't lie to. By the way, I live in Bel Air, and Justin Hoffman was my neighbor. I mean, their life is good, but you know what? The one question you give a question, what are you from? I can bring my friends, my parents, everybody to the United States. It's my home. I tell you a story. It's very symbolic story. It's philosophic story. One day, as sportsman, I fly from Canada to Europe, and close to me sit an old man, around 80 years old. And I talked to him, and they told, I'm Ukrainian. I fly back to Ukraine, spend whole my life in Canada because I'm born in Ukraine and growing up. And after that, emigrate. I was shocked. They fly back to Ukraine to die. They told me, I want to be there with my parents, grandfather, and to be together with them. I spent days, weeks to think about his word. It's mean homeland. Yes, and Los Angeles is great, beautiful city. Hamburg is, I spent a lot of time, many years in Los Angeles, in Hamburg, and many cities, but homeland, where is your friends, your language, your parents. In German have Wurzel. I don't know, it's difficult to translate. It's actually your blood there. And that's why is a philosophical question we fighting right now for our homeland. We're very appreciate to take a support, and very important to win, to rebuild, and to implement real European standards of life. Because simple question, why Poland can do that? I remember the Poland was it's one big market in the 90s. This very poor country was exactly the same Czech Republic. And right now, GDP in Poland 5 times bigger than in Ukraine. A couple of millions officially Ukrainian citizens work in Poland. And Ukraine, can you imagine, can you Google, Ukraine have 36% world reserve of black soil. Just 0.5% of whole territory in the world. 36% is black soil. And after these numbers, world reserve, after these numbers, you go to the village and see how poor live the people in the richest property in the world. Something wrong. We need know-how, we need technology, we need a lot of things, and country have huge potential. I'm more than sure. It's my favorite saying, you want to make good, but do it by yourself. And that's why it's not just my opinion, that's why many people right now fighting for the future of our homeland. Yes, of course, children, it's our future. Education, very important point. It's many points what we have to fix, but we can't do that alone, just with the friends, we support her. And that's why. Thank you. Big part of today's conversation was about Ukraine. Big part. And I'm very appreciate for your support of our homeland. We will be part of our family. And family will be much times stronger together with Ukraine. With good country, with good people, and good future. And one more time, thank you. It's very important. Don't lose support. Boxing example. Every finger is strong. But this finger coming together, times stronger. And that's why together we are times stronger. And thank you very much for every one of you. We have huge challenges in this winter. We have a lot of tasks, but I'm more than sure, I'm very optimistic. We win the war, we stop the war, and we rebuild democratic European country, Ukraine, but just with Ukrainian friends alone, we can do that. Thank you for your attention to my homeland, to my hometown.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. I think it might be breaking all the rules and going a little bit off script here because I can't get the app on here. There's many key players in the... Oh, how about this? We've got the questions, but I think maybe if it's okay by everybody, we'll maybe send one of these mics quickly into the audience as well, because I imagine there'll be one or two questions here that will be pertinent as well. But we're going to the app now. I'll go to for the first one in a second because it needs some sports translating. Well, I think we have the answer here. We'll stay in Prague. It says, the Pact of Free Cities seems to be an excellent initiative. Do you consider opening up the pact to other cities as well? So we've already heard that 33 cities are members, but I do think it's something that could include as many cities as Eurocities, for example.
Well, the Pact of Free Cities was, since its founding in 2019, opened for everyone else who wants to support the same values as we do. That means defending democracy, freedom, and human rights, and stand against the anti-liberal tendencies, the climate change denial, inequalities, or xenophobia. And it was not opened just for the cities. It actually was opened also for other institutional partners. I think we do not have anyone than the cities now, but it is definitely an open pact, and that is the reason why we do have now the 33 members, not just from Europe, but also beyond.
I'm going to ask the top question on Slido now, which I apologize, it's got nothing to do with the topic whatsoever, but and it goes to Mayor Klitschko. It says, boxing champion Alexander Usyk has said that he wants to fight Tyson Fury in Kyiv in 2013. Do you think the match is going to happen? We're a sports show now as well.
To be honest, I doesn't have time to see the box matches. It's right now... Nelson Mandela told a famous saying, sport have power to change the world. It's good. Alexander is our under contract in our sport company. He win the fight. Right now, strongest fighter in heavyweight division. We're very happy. Tyson Fury. You know what? This boxing is so interesting because no prediction. It's any punch can decide, make a decision. Let's see. Let's see. It's difficult to say. It's business. If it will be very interesting because Tyson Fury head bigger than me. Usyk 3 head smaller than Fury. It will be interesting to see this fight, but right now decision of Tyson Fury, and we hope in next year fight will be happen.
But as you've shown today, actually, sometimes being the smaller person is actually the way that you win. You can still have the killer punch in these fights. Can I just ask you? Interesting though, there's a hint of how important is it for these more normal moments of life to come back to Kyiv, even now that the sports matches. The minister was talking about going there. The markets flourishing. Carlotta, who is our correspondent who came to see you in Kyiv in the summer, said she went to the river, people sunbathing, people out jogging. That it's for outsiders. It's at first a little bit discombobulating because it's like, okay, we thought the whole city was, everyone was, in bunkers, and now suddenly you realize that life comes back very quickly when you take away a threat.
We are very happy. It's before the war, the population of our city was 3.6 million people. And right now, with refugees, almost 3 million. People coming back in life. We have right now, thanks for support, good anti-rocket systems. And last rocket attack was 4 weeks ago, but nobody give a guarantee is any second, any minutes rockets fly, because some attacks was in Kiev, on Kiev direction, and rockets shut down. Actually, life coming back, but the feeling in the air, the feeling nobody feel him safety like before. And every citizens of Ukraine have one wish: peace. 3 letters, 1 word.
Philippe, can I just quickly ask you? You know, as we say, we're in this in the western parts of Ukraine. Maybe things are a bit calmer now. But you said that you have to kind of strategize for what happens if there was an incident at a nuclear plant, or what happens if the call-up goes better than we hope at this moment. So are you already going through those strategies if there is another wave of refugees, if there are another wave of children who need your help?
Definitely. I mean, this is the winter is going to be very harsh in terms of temperature, and when you have young children and it's cold, and it could be very cold in Ukraine, as you know, people are going to escape to protect their children. If you have, and you see that now nuclear power plants are targeted, and in Ukraine they know what it is. They had Chernobyl, so people understand the major threat. Again, it will move people around, and the intensification of the conflict that we expect, unfortunately, will also get people leave. So we need to be having more resilience in neighboring countries so that these families could be welcome. And this is why we continue to support municipalities in hosting countries very practically, so that the scope and the capacity to match that scope of refugees will be there. We are nowhere there because it's unpredictable. But it's extremely important to continue the investment, to link also governments, service of the governments, of the various ministries. You have social workers, you have teachers, you have the health system. A doctor, for instance, we have an amazing partnership with the Ministry of Health in the Czech Republic, where we are with the Ministry of Health training doctors, Ukrainian refugee doctors, so they can also practice in the Slovak Republic, in the Czech Republic, and we do this in Slovak and in other countries. Same for pediatricians, same for psychologists, because there are norms, and even teachers, you could not be allowed to teach because you are not part of the standard. So we have to link. We are in the EU, the systems. We are not in Eritrea, we are not in Ethiopia. So this is a very different type of humanitarian response. It's really leveraging the humanitarian response to build further the system of the country. So at the end, hopefully soon, the system of the countries for children, the most vulnerable children, not only the child, Ukrainian child refugee, but the migrant child, the child with disability, the Roma child, the child from the poorest household will also benefit from services that are sustainable. So that's the way it is planned for.
Okay, so lots of questions are now coming in from the floor. So I think we can go through quite a few quickly. Minister, there's a very good one here. What's your view on receiving Russian immigrants who don't want to join the fight in Russia? Will you be accepting citizens who try and cross the border as refugees?
That's a big question, which is now being discussed in many EU capitals, and not only EU capitals, but many countries in the world. Well, first of all, these are not people who are escaping the war. They are escaping the Russian legislation, and however it might be strange to say that, they duty towards the Russian state. So this is number one. These cannot be granted humanitarian visa because, yes, Ukrainians are escaping the war. These people are not escaping the war. Second, these people are not the group of people who are escaping the war, I mean the obligation to go to the war and fight, is not identical with a group of people in Russia who disagree with this aggression. Many of them, they approve Putin's policies, but they don't want to participate physically in it. I was digging a lot in the archives of so-called Masaryk Action of Help in Prague. And that was the moment when, after the Bolshevik Revolution, many people from the Russian Empire were escaping Russia, and they established a huge community of several dozens of thousand people here in Prague with own university and lively community, many of them philosophers. If you read the text, you realize one thing. These were either people who were not ethnic Russians, so they were escaping empire, Russian Empire, Ukrainians, many of them, Belarusians and others. Or they were great Russia imperialists hating the West, but escaping from Bolsheviks. Many of them were white aristocracy, imperial aristocracy of Russia, and their writings, they are really full of hate towards the West. And they were living so pleasantly in Clamart, suburb of Paris, in Prague, Berlin, Brussels, Belgrade, Sofia, and so on, Vienna. So this is something to be taken in mind. Then, next argument. Well, once some Russian community is being created, they are good candidates to be liberated, right? So, for example, in the Baltic states, with all the demography which is difficult, I would be extremely cautious to create any Russian community, a candidate to be liberated. And then the last argument. If you allow that person who wants to escape the, let's say, patriotic duty, ironically, patriotic, you take away from Russia the person who can demonstrate and who can be opposing the regime. You take away from that the pressure from Russia, the pressure on the government, and you just gave them the refuge. And now what is important? You might say, okay, but then less people will fight Ukrainians in the war because we will take them away. But the reservoir of those people is 3 million, or according to Shoigu, 5 million people who might be called to the front. So basically, if we take away several, even hundreds of thousands, they will be replaced, and just the other people will be forced to come and fight. We will not take away all of them. That's pretty clear. And for me personally, it's always better a deserter who will decide not to fight on Ukrainian territory at the front, because he will bring with him the uniform, the weapon potentially. He will take away the information which will give to Ukrainians. And, of course, he will destroy the morale of the troops on the battlefield. So I think these were people which were addressed by President Zelensky when he was talking to them directly. It's better if they escape at that point than if they escape at the beginning of the process, just bypassing the battlefield. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arguments, all of them for me against. Now, being a diplomat, all the rules need to have some exceptions. I'm for the door, a little door to that rule which is there, which is open, but not too much, and the door is just more window or some small window, and a little bit open. So there are always cases where you can consider. So that's the Czech policy, how we approach it, and for us, these are not refugees.
Thank you. One for you, Zdeněk. The question is about rebuilding cities and the quality at which you rebuild, and whether you rebuild fast and quick and make sure that there are schools quickly to go to, or that we don't drop the debate about the need to be a greener, cleaner economy going forward. Do you think it's important that we have this discussion when we're talking about Ukraine as well, that we make sure that what we offer, if we offer help to Ukraine, it's not to do something cheaply and quickly, as may have happened in the Soviet times, but we build well and we build for the long term?
Yes, well, I would like to follow here up on what as Rafal said here on the stage a few moments ago, and this was that definitely this is not and should not be meant as and in any way as patronizing the people in Ukraine in a way how it should be done. I think it's just an offered hand, and if the Ukrainians want to use it, is it there? But of course, it's up to them. So that is the first very thing. But yes, well, if you look at Prague, it's of course very nice city, specifically in the city center. But for sure, there are let's say, less polished spots in our city. We are not showing you those today, not even tomorrow, but never mind, they are there. Every city has got them. And I believe, yes, it is a chance to make things better than they were before. I really do not like to use the word opportunity in here, because first of all, it's a huge human tragedy, the war, and I think the word opportunity should not be used here. But for sure, it is a chance how to make things better from the urbanistic perspective, because frankly saying, a lot of problems in the cities arise from how they are designed from the urbanistic perspective, or how the public space is designed, and so on. So, for example, at Wenceslau Square, we are now doing a huge revitalization of this very important square in Prague and the whole Czech Republic. And frankly speaking, it was more like a periphery in the city center. I'm not sure how to translate that like properly, but it was a periphery in the city center, and with all the problems related to city peripheral part, and it was in the city center. So, but by redesigning the public space, I believe that some of the problems will actually be either solved or at least mitigated.
Philip, can I just quickly ask you, when you go in as UNICEF, I wonder whether you go in as somebody thinking, we are a temporary service, we are a conduit from a bad place to a good place, and then we'll be gone, or are you also thinking about long-term solutions, and that you may be there on the ground, both in Ukraine and in the cities that we're talking about here in the Pact, for many years to come?
Clearly, in Ukraine, we were there before the war, we were there during the war, we are going to be there after the war, and that's an ongoing engagement as part of the recovery. We have submitted to the government of Ukraine our vision that it should not be a recovery for brick and mortar and big business reconstruction. We have seen that in many instances, but focused on children and adolescents to make sure that they are the core consideration in this recovery. So a child-centered recovery, and this is what we are calling upon to all the partners in the recovery. So not just to focus on the business opportunity to rebuild, but focusing on a generation that has been stolen from his childhood, that has been traumatized. And that's where, as a European, I think our value should be. Placing children at the heart of our societies. The social cohesion of our societies depend on how we are going to be including these children that are coming from Ukraine, how we are going to protect them, to make sure they continue to learn, to make sure they're not going to be traumatized when they become adults. This is a European value, and this is what is at stake. So we'll continue that. In countries where we don't need to have country program per se, like in the Czech Republic, the sooner the better when we phase out, but we are here to really support municipalities, government, civil society. We work a lot with scouts. Young people are very active in this response. They want to be part of the change. So it's very important also to engage young people in this response, in this inclusion, in this protection of the social cohesion of our countries.
Thank you. And Zdeněk, another quick one for you. I think there may be a mayor somewhere online hoping that they can join the Pact. They want to know, what do you have to do to join the Pact? What does a city need to come up with to be allowed to be a member of your gang?
Well, sure. Well, it's best to contact
They just send you an email, do they?
Yeah, that will be probably the fast way. Just send me an email and we will process that. Of course, everyone, every large city, well, every city maybe, just not to scare anyone, but basically everyone who is willing to support the values of the pact is welcomed. Even UNICEF, if you wish to.
And just tell me, Mayor Klitschko, we're almost at the end of this session. As we leave people, as they head off this evening and they go and have a glass of wine and they meet over dinner, what do you think should be the topics that they have top of mind as conversations that should continue after today? You've raised lots of important points. 2 or 3 things that stuck with me is you've made it clear that, you know, if we get fatigue around this, you know, we have to remember that it's not only Ukraine that could succumb to this war. And you've also talked, I think, very movingly about the holding the flame of European values, what that means, and it's amazing actually to be here in all of these, see all these cities in the east, the likes of Tirana and for Warsaw, to be such champions of European values, and to almost hold them more valuably than many of the places where you would think that flame was originally lit. Can you tell me, just finally as we send people off, just let's leave people a little bit inspired about the significance of this fight and what needs to happen?
I see, I feel unity, and I talk to many people, and everyone ask about Ukraine, talk about Ukraine, wish to Ukraine a lot, and it's actually, to be honest, I will be very happy with good mood, fly back, drive back tomorrow to Ukraine. Can't be long time away. It's actually very important signal today was to sign the Pact of Free Cities, and Kyiv, part of Pact of Free Cities, European cities. It's symbolic, and step by step, with small steps, we will be real part of European family. It's our goal. For that we fight. For that we died, and actually, to end our discussion one more time, very appreciate, thank you for every one of you, for your wishes, for your support. We win. Together we are much stronger, and I will be very happy in 1 year. It's a good idea. I have a good idea right now. It's next year, in 1 year, to make a Pact of Free Cities in peaceful capital of Ukraine. Huh?
We will be there. We will be there to join you.
If everybody will be, agree. If everybody will be agree, it's I will be very happy to see our friends, and I invite to people to our hometown to use my skills as city guide to present one of the beautiful city in the world. It's actually, and citizens give me right to by myself to change my city to much more pretty, much better, much impressive, and I promise to everyone, if I more than sure it's good. You know what is very important to think about that and do it, and all wishes coming true if you want very much, if you work hard, and actually good idea. Let's work in that next in 1 year. Pact of Free Cities, Free European Cities, to make in capital of in peaceful capital of Ukraine.
Thank you. And I think I think the mayor would make a very, very good city guide because you wouldn't lose him in a crowd. He wouldn't need an umbrella to hold up for you to follow him. You'd know exactly where to go. But I'd like to thank Jaroslav Kurfürst, to Zdeněk Žib, to Philip Corrie, and of course to Mayor Klitschko for joining us on stage. Thank you. And quickly, just before everybody disappears, a big thank you for everyone for being here this afternoon. A huge thank you to everybody who asked questions and all the people online. And a reminder that we'll be back tomorrow to talk about quality of life in all of our cities, including in Kiev, as you've heard today. Thank you from me, Andrew Tuck at Monocle, and thank you to all the people at CAMP for organizing such an amazing day. Thank you.